Yeah, I'm gonna make it again. I'm sorry. I apologize. Except I don't. In 2015, Walmart put into effect information about how it was developing a prescription medication database. Presumably, it was supposed to help make prescription medication more available, easily available, including through online ordering, in connection with the pharmacy program it had at Walmart. By 2017, it was supposed to be ready. My contention is that they were also doing it in connection with the processes by which Walmart was also offering health insurance to other companies, including companies that were not Walmart. And that amongst the companies they were offering this to were companies that were involved with manufacturing of industrial materials. One of the things that they were doing, I believe, is they were doing something comparable through the prescription medication database that they were doing with the cards. For instance, you get a prepaid card and you go to the register, that you will get some sort of discount at the register. Regardless of what the price says when you're actually doing the accounting for whether or not you have the budget with that prepaid card to afford the items you have, when you get to the register, sometimes they will register an undercharge. Question being, how many people ask for a price check on an overcharge versus how many people ask for a price check on an undercharge? I believe they keep track of that data and that they use it in addition to, in connection with, the undercharge that they give you when you get that discount at the register. It's comparable to what I understand they did during the 2008 banking bailout, where these banks ended up getting loans from the government, but they also ended up getting subsidies that didn't need to be paid back. And so when they paid back the loans, they ended up getting the credit repair that came with keeping the loan schedule, but they also got some sort of extra credit because they paid interest. There's a lot of talk at the time about how the government actually made money on the banking bailout because the ones that paid back on time, or some cases even early, ended up paying the interest in addition to paying back the loan, but they didn't pay for the subsidies. So depending upon the kind of way you see the accounting set up, the way it's reflected, you got columns in the black, you got columns in the red. And I believe that they developed some sort of greater advancement in systems that already existed regarding leveraging the black columns with the red columns. I believe Walmart was doing something similar, where they were keeping track of what would have been the cost had the discount not been applied. But then what was the difference when the discount was applied? And that this was part of what they were doing in connection with the development of that prescription database system. It wasn't just about prescription medications. And that it was also concurrent to them providing health insurance. For instance, there are places where they have Walmart health insurance even if you're not working for Walmart. So at least some of these places, and maybe not just the places that Walmart's providing health insurance for, but they've been creating these schedules at these companies that do not comply with labor law. For one thing, back in the day, if you were in a town, the company could not say, this is part of the history of labor organizing, you're not allowed to have a monopoly on what people do with their wages. You can't say that instead of paying you wages, we're going to make you spend at the store what would have been the wages in consideration of this company's store being a part of the company. And so we're not going to give you wages so that you can buy what you want. We're going to give you store credit. This is comparable to what they're doing with these Walmart cards when they're tracking people's consumer purchases and they're setting up these paradigms to do whatever else they're determining they're going to be doing. But then you get this process where people are working in these contexts where the schedules they're working do not comply with labor law. For instance, they'll say you work 6 days, 12-hour shifts, and then you'll get 10 days off. As I said, I did the calculations. I did it for a time period. I did it for a couple of months. I did it for 6 months. I did it for a longer extended period of time. And what I found is that if you actually do the comparison of a specific time period, for instance, a monthly analysis of 6 12-hour days with 10 days off versus keeping a standard legally required schedule of 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, or overtime. If you get one kind of cost-benefit analysis, but I believe what they're doing is they're leveraging the difference in what they're getting away with by not being forced to pay overtime. That they're creating almost like a separate red column with the differences in what they're not having to pay in being charged for overtime as some sort of illegal or non-legal tender, yet still available insurance. And they've been doing it for years, but then there's also the kind of factors that go into the kind of stressors that are put on people when people are working in these conditions where, for instance, you're working 12 hours a day, and you got to deal with what you're doing on your time off, including whether or not you're getting appropriate sleep or including if you're getting appropriate rest, and then what it means to come back into the work system after having 10 days off. Are you one of those people that drink hard on the weekend and then go back to work on Monday? What if you got 10 days off in a row? How long can you sustain that schedule depending upon what you do with your lifestyle? I believe these are the kind of things that they're micro-tracking and they're micromanaging that they're putting into these kind of contexts. This is, the kind of thing that has been going on for a while, but I really think that that's part of the capital outlay process. That wasn't just about dealing with this crisis. It was part of the capital outlay process, not only in connection with the banking bailout, but also with the Affordable Care Act. For instance, in connection, how many people have asked for their billing records, including and especially if they've had to get treatment that's billed to Medicare? See, I did. And by law, if you bill Medicare, you have to receive the payment within 6 months of the event that's being billed. Well, after the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, presumably, there were all of these court processes that were engaged to challenge the Affordable Care Act. I contend inadequately. But what it ended up doing is, as I saw when I saw my billing records, is there were periods of time between 6 months and a year where people were not getting the legal billing associated with Medicare. And some of those billings ended up happening almost a year after the actual session, meaning by law they were not legal. And Congress and or the courts did not do anything to provide some sort of modification to the existing law in order to allow for a temporary period in time wherein the law concerning Medicare billing was either suspended or there was some sort of other consideration to provide legal support. And I contend they knew this. Thing is also medical records are only supposed to be available or only required to be available for up to 7 years. Some places have a 10-year storage requirement. But what ended up happening after 2017? I asked for my medical records first time in 2016, but because of the interstate implications, right? And by the time I had already gotten them stolen and then I requested them, they told me in 2017, well, we don't have to have them anymore and we don't have them to give to you. See, somebody stole my patient notes and my billing records in 2016, 2017. Now, some of those records from 2010 are supposedly not available to me. But if you only have to keep them on site for 7 years, and you may only have to keep them in storage for 10, what happened around 2017? What happened around 2020? My concern is that in 2017 and 2018, there were a number of places around the world, including with the World Health Organization, that were having conferences, including in connection with their own electronic health record systems. I contend they already knew about the setup that they were implementing as part of the Affordable Care Act before its passage. And that now, what happened in 2020? Well, the states of emergency that were declared in the United States for COVID-19 came before March 24th of 2020. That would have been right before the 10-year period where places would have been required to have on-site storage of medical records that would have been commenced or would have been billed for regarding treatment that came on or after March 24th of 2010. I contend that they knew this from the onset, and then the question becomes, what ended up happening with those old medical records? Not just the actual patient notes, but also the billing records, including, in some cases, the 6 months to a year term during which there were billings that were actually by law illegal, i.e., they'd be registered in the red. I contend they knew this. As I said, which is why I think you tried to delete the last video, is that in order to deal with that, we would have to understand some other things that were going on, including starting in 2018. What happened in 2018? And I'm not just talking about saying to somebody directly, hey, I understand there's a case going on. I have information I'd like to help. And then somebody say, well, you know what, don't worry about that. And then setting me up on a fucking dirty spike deal, right? Oh, shoot. Was that where you hoping this wouldn't go? Yeah, me too. But you had to take it there. Don't fuck with any more of my videos.